The whistle in the wind. The forest is silent, except for the whisper of the wind twisting between the trees. Then, from somewhere unseen, comes a soft, mocking whistle, playful yet unsettling. The leaves rustle, and a small whirlwind dances across the dirt path. Someone, or something, is there. This is how many Brazilians describe an encounter with the Saci-Pererê, one of the most mysterious and enduring figures in the folklore of South America. The Saci is not merely a myth or a ghost story told to frighten children. He is a spiritual trickster, a protector and punisher, a symbol of resistance and cultural fusion born from centuries of indigenous, African, and European influences. To outsiders, he might appear as a mischievous one-legged boy wearing a red cap and smoking a pipe, laughing as he plays pranks on travelers or vanishes into a swirl of dust. But behind that laughter hides something deeper, a reflection of Brazil's soul itself. The Saci embodies duality, chaos and wisdom, laughter and danger, freedom and rebellion. He is not purely evil nor entirely good. Instead, he is the balance between the two, a spiritual reminder that the world's forces of nature and spirit cannot be tamed or categorized. For centuries, people across Brazil have passed down stories of this mysterious being. Farmers blamed him for missing tools or tangled horse manes. Hunters feared to anger him, for he was the guardian of the forest. And yet, children adored his playfulness and his cunning. The legend of Saci-Pererê is much more than folklore. It is a living memory, shaped by generations who survived colonization, slavery, and cultural mixing. Through this legend, Brazil's people expressed their fears, hopes, humor, and defiance. But who is the Saci really? Where did he come from? And why does his legend endure even in an age of science and machines? To answer that, we must return to a time before Brazil was even called Brazil, back to the primal forests, where spirits roamed freely and the wind itself carried stories. Echoes of the forest, indigenous roots of the legend. Long before Portuguese ships arrived on Brazil's shores, the dense forests were alive with spirits. To the Tupi-Guarani and other indigenous peoples, every river, mountain, and tree had a guardian. The wind was not just air, it was a voice. And among those spirits was one who could move like the wind itself, playful, unpredictable, and powerful. This early version of Saci was not yet the one-legged boy we know today. Among many tribes, he was known as Matintepera, Matinta Pereira, or Saci Treek, depending on the region. He could appear as a bird, a whirlwind, or a small human-like figure who punished hunters who disrespected nature. To the indigenous worldview, nature was not separate from humanity. It was alive, conscious, and sacred. The spirit that became Saci was a manifestation of balance. When people hunted too much, cut too many trees, or polluted the rivers, this spirit would retaliate, hiding tools, scaring animals, or making the winds howl through the night. The most important symbol associated with him was the whirlwind. In indigenous belief, a sudden whirlwind was not random. It was the movement of a spirit crossing dimensions, a messenger between the physical and spiritual worlds. Those who saw it had to show respect. Some would throw tobacco or offer a prayer, while others whispered the name of the spirit and waited for the wind to pass. Over time, stories about this whirlwind spirit began to take on more human characteristics. He became a boy with magical powers, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel, but always connected to the forest. When colonization began, and indigenous peoples were enslaved or displaced, these oral stories survived in whispers and songs. They merged with new beliefs brought by Africans, forming something entirely new, a myth that could not be erased. Thus, the seed of Saci-Pererê was planted, born from the wind, shaped by the forest, and destined to become one of the greatest symbols of Brazil's spiritual heritage. To the indigenous peoples, Saci was not a monster. He was a teacher, reminding humans that nature is alive, and that disrespect has consequences. His laughter in the wind was both warning and wisdom. The African soul, magic, resistance, and the birth of Saci. As the Atlantic slave ships arrived in Brazil, they carried more than chains and human suffering. They carried entire worlds of faith, song, and spiritual power. Within the hearts of those torn from Africa burned a deep understanding of the unseen, a world alive with spirits, orishas, and forces that governed life and death. It was within this crucible of pain and resilience that the myth of Saci-Pererê began to transform. Enslaved Africans, especially from the Bantu and Yoruba traditions, saw the indigenous spirits of Brazil not as strangers but as reflections of their own. The whirlwind spirit of the forest, protector of nature and trickster of the arrogant, reminded them of Exu, the messenger of the gods, the guardian of crossroads, and the master of transformation. Exu was neither good nor evil. He was chaos that created motion, the spark that connected heaven and earth. To the enslaved, Exu was a symbol of freedom, the only one who could move between worlds. The indigenous wind spirit, mischievous and free, embodied that same essence. And so, across centuries of cultural mixing and survival, the two spirits merged. The Saci that emerged from this encounter was not just a forest ghost. He became a rebel spirit, born from resistance. His one leg was not a deformity, but a mark of survival. Some said he lost it escaping from a trap set by colonizers. Others believed it symbolized his speed. With one leg, he could vanish in a heartbeat, leaving behind only laughter and a swirl of red dust. His red cap, too, took on new meaning. In African spiritualism, red is the color of energy, blood, and the divine force that sustains life. It is also the color of Exu, the gatekeeper. To wear red was to channel that force, to be unstoppable, untouchable, eternal. The enslaved Africans who worked in Brazil's plantations would whisper stories of Saci at night, around the fire. He became a symbol of cunning and liberation, a spirit who could play tricks on the cruel overseers, confuse the dogs, or set loose the horses. In him, they saw the possibility of justice that the human world denied them. Through laughter and fear, Saci became a protector of the oppressed. The stories carried through generations became both a warning and a comfort, that no matter how strong one's chains might be, there would always be a force of nature ready to resist. The Africans gave Saci something new, a soul of rebellion. He was no longer only a forest guardian, he was a messenger of freedom. The same whirlwind that once rustled the trees now swirled through the sugarcane fields, carrying with it whispers of hope, mischief, and the unbreakable spirit of those who refused to be silenced. When dawn came and the wind grew still, it was said that Saci had vanished into the forest once again, laughing, whistling, watching over those who dared to dream of freedom. European shadows, the red cap and the trickster spirit. When the Portuguese colonizers brought their own myths to Brazil, a new transformation took place. Europe had its own tricksters, mischievous elves, goblins, and spirits of the night who played pranks on humans. Among them was the Saci of Portugal, a shadowy creature with red hair and a mischievous grin. It is from this old European Saci that the Brazilian Saci inherited his name, but not his soul. The European version was a simple prankster, a creature of folklore with no depth or purpose beyond mischief. Yet, as this legend mixed with indigenous and African traditions, the Brazilian Saci became something infinitely more complex, a reflection of a nation being born out of chaos and diversity. The red cap, for example, was a European symbol of magic, believed to grant invisibility or teleportation. In Brazilian stories, this cap became the Saci's source of power. Whoever stole it could control him, though few dared to try. But unlike the European version, Saci's power was not given by fairies or magic spells. It came from the very elements, from the wind, fire, and the ancestral energy that flowed through the land. European influence also introduced a darker side to his legend. Catholic priests, alarmed by the persistence of African and indigenous beliefs, began to depict Saci as a demonic figure, an agent of temptation. His pipe was seen as a symbol of sin, his laughter of rebellion against divine order. But the people saw through that. To them, Saci was not the devil, he was the spirit of the people themselves, defying oppression through laughter. Every story told by candlelight, every whispered warning about whirlwinds in the night, was an act of cultural preservation disguised as folklore. In the countryside, parents told their children not to whistle at night, not out of fear of evil, but out of respect for Saci. Farmers would leave offerings of tobacco or cachaca at the edge of the forest to appease him, asking for protection of their crops. And so, even as European influence tried to tame or demonize the Saci, he adapted, just as Brazil itself adapted to centuries of change. He became a being of paradox, part indigenous guardian, part African trickster, part European sprite, and yet completely Brazilian. Through these layers of cultural fusion, the Saci-Pererê that we know today was born, a symbol of transformation, survival, and humor in the face of hardship. He is the wind that cannot be caught, the laugh that cannot be silenced, a legend that continues to dance between worlds, forever out of reach. The spirit of the wind, powers, symbols, and the whirlwind gate. The Saci-Pererê is not a mere character of folklore. He is the wind itself. Every gust that twists through the trees, every sudden swirl of dust on a lonely road, is said to be his doing. To understand Saci is to understand the invisible forces that breathe through the Brazilian land, a blend of nature's fury and mystery. His whirlwind, or redemoinho, is more than just a playful breeze. In the old stories told by the elders of the countryside, it is a gateway between worlds. When a whirlwind appears out of nowhere, locals say it is Saci traveling between the visible and invisible realms. Children are warned never to throw stones at it, for fear that they might wound the trickster and invite his revenge. The whirlwind symbolizes Saci's dual nature, chaos and protection. It can bring confusion, scattering seeds and animals, but it can also cleanse the air, clear the path, and carry away bad energy. Those who respect it may receive his favor, those who mock it risk his wrath. Saci's pipe, always seen between his lips, is another symbol full of power. To the untrained eye, it is just a small piece of wood. But in Afro-Brazilian spiritualism, the act of smoking represents communion with ancestral spirits. The smoke rises to the heavens, carrying thoughts, prayers, and intentions. For Saci, each puff of smoke is a whisper between worlds, an ancient conversation between freedom and mischief. His red cap, as many legends say, grants him the power to vanish, to become invisible, or to appear wherever the wind blows. But this power has rules. It must never be stolen without permission. Those foolish enough to try often find themselves trapped in endless circles of bad luck, haunted by strange laughter echoing in the dark. Some traditions claim that Saci's power is strongest at midnight, when the world of spirits opens. It is said that if you stand at a crossroads at that hour, you can hear his whistle, a sharp, playful sound carried by the wind. If you answer it, you may be tested. He could offer you luck or lure you into confusion. Saci is not an evil being, he is balance. Like the wind, he cannot be owned or controlled. He exists to remind humanity of its limits, that nature and spirit are forces beyond domination. Farmers who offended the land or treated animals cruelly might find their tools missing, their crops twisted, or their paths blocked by mysterious whirlwinds. But those who showed respect often found Saci to be an unexpected ally. In spiritual readings and folk rituals, the Saci's whirlwind is seen as a symbol of transformation. It breaks stagnation. It teaches movement. It tears apart what is rotten so that new life can emerge. Many spiritualists interpret his presence as a test of humility, the challenge to coexist with what cannot be tamed. Through generations, this wind-born figure became an archetype of the unseen, the bridge between the physical and the mystical. He is laughter in the face of fear, rebellion in the face of oppression, and movement in the face of stillness. The whirlwind is not his prison, it is his freedom. And when the night grows still again, those who have met the Saci say that they can still feel his spirit in the wind, playful, eternal, and watching from the shadows of the trees. Fear and respect, the moral lessons behind the myth. Every legend holds a truth disguised as fantasy, and Saci-Pererê is no exception. Beneath his tricks, laughter, and chaos lies a deep moral structure, a spiritual code of respect, humility, and coexistence. In the Brazilian countryside, stories of Saci were used not only to entertain but to teach behavior. Parents would warn their children that those who lied, disrespected elders, or harmed animals might attract Saci's attention. He would not kill or torture, but he would teach, through confusion, mischief, or small disasters. He teaches that power lies not in control, but in harmony, that laughter is not weakness, but wisdom, that nature is not something to dominate, but to live with. So, when the wind rises suddenly and the dust begins to swirl, listen carefully. Perhaps it is not just the breeze. Perhaps it is Saci himself, still running, still laughing, still teaching the world that true freedom is found not in order, but in the dance of the unpredictable. The eternal trickster, how Saci became the soul of Brazilian myth. As the centuries passed, empires rose and fell, borders changed, and faiths collided, but the Saci remained. He shifted shape, voice, and meaning, adapting to each new era like the wind itself. What began as whispers among indigenous fires, mixed with the rhythms of African drums and echoes of European fears, transformed into something truly unique, the soul of Brazilian folklore. The power of Saci lies not only in his mischief, but in his endurance. He is not a ghost of the past, he is a living metaphor. In every village that tells his story, in every forest path that rustles without reason, he reminds people that Brazil's spirit is born of contradiction, wild yet kind, rebellious yet wise, mysterious yet joyful. Modern storytellers have tried to confine him to children's tales, cartoon characters, or moral lessons, but Saci refuses to be tamed. He is not meant to live in books. He lives in the air. When city streets echo with laughter during carnival, when the scent of rain mixes with red earth, when a sudden gust of wind catches your hat, there he is, invisible but unmistakable. Writers like Monteiro Lobato gave him form and fame, but his true essence transcends literature. The Saci is not just a character. He is a living symbol of resistance and identity. For the enslaved Africans, he was hope disguised as laughter. For the indigenous, he was nature's spirit in motion. For the colonizers, he was fear they could never name, the unknown that refused to bow to reason. This is why, in spiritual traditions, Saci is seen as a guardian and a messenger. He teaches that no matter how hard humans try to silence the forest, its voice finds a way to speak. His one leg is not weakness, but balance, the mark of those who have been wounded yet still move forward. He does not walk like others. He dances between worlds. In a time when artificial intelligence begins to dream and machines claim consciousness, Saci stands as a reminder that mystery cannot be programmed. The unseen, the irrational, and the magical still exist, and they belong to those who dare to believe. The world may explain the wind through science, but it can never explain why it sometimes feels alive. The enduring legend of Saci also carries a cultural truth. Brazil's folklore is not just a collection of stories, it is a living archive of memory. It preserves the pain, the laughter, the faith, and the rebellion of generations who refuse to let their voices fade. In every tale of Saci's mischief, there is an echo of freedom, the same freedom that birthed samba, capoeira, and the eternal rhythm of the land. Spiritually, Saci reminds humanity that chaos and creation are twins. The same whirlwind that destroys can also renew. The same laughter that confuses can also heal. His power lies in movement, in never being caught, never being fully understood. He is the dance of the unpredictable, the embodiment of everything that escapes definition. And so, the Saci continues to run through the veins of Brazil, through dreams, songs, and stories. His whistle still echoes across the countryside at dusk, a sound that is both playful and haunting. Some say he protects the lost, others claim he tests the proud. But all agree on one thing: when the wind rises suddenly, it is wise to smile and greet it, for the Saci may be passing by. Because in the end, Saci is not just a myth. He is the reminder that freedom, laughter, and mystery will always survive, no matter how much the world tries to explain them away.